Welcome to Discussions of Music, Healing, and Consciousness with your hosts Chris Noble and Bill Perotzman. On this podcast, Chris and I offer a spontaneous, ongoing conversation about how music is intertwined with healing and consciousness. We hope this podcast will cultivate your knowledge and curiosity, inspire your own study and practice of the musical and healing arts, and that your contribution to advancing world consciousness will be satisfying for you and transformative to those around you. Let's get started.
Well, we were going to talk about silence today.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
So for those listening, you're about to enjoy 55 minutes of silence.
Starting right now. Oh, that'd be a great podcast.
Wouldn't it, though? The silent podcast.
The silent podcast. I mean, that's a foolproof way to just produce content constantly.
Exactly. And it's too bad neither one of us is a mime.
No, not quite there.
Or do you do ASL?
Nope.
Sign the whole thing, like have it be an entirely silent but sign language based podcast?
No, unfortunately, no. That would be really interesting. But I guess today we'll talk about maybe the sound of silence.
The sound of silence.
And just the idea of more quiet contemplation and just not having sound and music going on, kind of as it's a balance, right?
It's balance.
Yeah.
But the first line of Sound of Silence, "Hello, darkness, my old friend."
Exactly.
There's a invitation in that to do the shadow work, right? But shadow work isn't necessarily always silent. I think being able to turn it off is the thing we're talking about here, like being consciously making a choice to turn off the noise, and turn off the music.
Right. We're constantly stimulated. I mean, that's just it. I think it's more of it's an invitation, just especially in this day and age, to just take a moment and turn off your devices for a second. And hey, if you're listening or watching to this, maybe press pause for like 1 to 5 minutes and just see what the silence will do for you. And I'm sure, like even myself, I'm amazed when I consciously put aside some quiet time for myself, how foreign it can feel sometimes.
God, it's really weird.
It is, right?
Because we are so overly stimulated. I mean, a phone is one thing, but our entire civilization is based on content, right? We've reached this point
of that right now.
If you're not making content, you're not alive, right?
Yeah.
And
or consuming it,
making it. Does anybody have time to consume it?
I mean, people seem. I mean, there's so many people too, right, that have jobs where they are so bored at the job, or they're just constantly consuming content. I see that all the time. So it's either that we're creating it or we're consuming it, but it's always this do, go, which is a very masculine energy, forward motion, stimulation. And it's important to get into that feminine receiving energy and be in silence. And that would be like more of a feminine trait, is to be in that silence, to then, when you're in silence, I mean, the beautiful thing is it is something that you can start to get a little addicted to, because we're so addicted to the opposite of that. When you experience quiet and silence, it is so nice. It's so peaceful. And it's why when we go out of the cities into the country, we're always usually like, wow, it's so quiet.
It's so quiet. I do love that, going up to the mountains. There's a point, and maybe it's elevation. There's a point where it just feels different to me. And you can smell the pine trees, and if you're not in a car, the sounds are all different. You can hear the sounds of nature again, instead of the sounds of the city or whatever, you're the suburb.
Well, and that's the thing, right? With silence, it's never true silence, right? There's always some form of a sound. And then you get to tune into those sounds. And, even as a smaller example, one thing I do like to do, I've done this for many years now, is when I'm walking down, I think we've even talked about this on another episode, but anyway, when I'm walking down a residential street, for example, in the city, I'll usually take my headphones out. If I'm listening to music, I'll take them out, and I'll just, and if it's a more quiet residential street, I'm like, let's listen to some birds and hear some trees rustling in the wind and all that nice stuff. And you just kind of like pick up the neighborhood energy and sounds. It's very peaceful. And then the second I go into a major street, I'm like, nope, headphones back in.
Yeah, time to protect us.
Yeah, so it's a balance again.
I love walking in nature, even around here. We live more in the suburbs now than downtown San Diego. But there are bees. And I don't know if they're eucalyptus trees or whatever, but one by one, these various species of trees have bloomed here in November and December. And they're just thousands of bees in there. So the whole tree is humming.
That's so cool.
Yeah. And you just go by and just a sound bath from the bees, right?
Right.
Listen, it's not loud, but it's there. And what a great gift, right? To give yourself the tone of the bees humming, or tones, whatever they are.
I mean, most of what, I'm working on with my music is pretty much just trying to replicate exactly what you're getting when you go into nature anyway.
Oh, perfect.
You know what I mean? So it's like, that's all I'm trying to do is kind of find my own way of recreating that incredible calmness and that beauty of nature that you feel so, encompassed. It's like a warm blanket that just absorbs you, and it's such a relaxing phenomenon. I go out once a week and I have one nature day, quote unquote, every day or every week. I'd love it to be every day. And I'm working towards building, a lifestyle that can support that. But anyway, as I drive back into the city from my nature day each week, I have been reflecting and saying to myself, like, I want to flip the ratio here. I would like to eventually move out of a city to something smaller where I'm in the nature, I'm waking up in the nature. And then, I'll commute into the city for gigs, events, things like that. That's fine. But I am feeling more of that because it's just nicer to wake up for me in that silence and in that space already. I don't have to put in all that effort, get put the gas in the car and drive out. And, even though I'm very fortunate and it's a very easy commute for me here in Vancouver to get out into nature, still it's such a privilege in a way, and a really beautiful treat to be able to just live somewhere in that quiet, beautiful nature environment, wherever that might look like. And I think one of the main reasons is because it's so quiet.
Quiet.
That silence is just it's its own beautiful thing. It's such a therapeutic phenomenon.
It does have its own inner music too. I mean, total silence, putting on the noise canceling headphones, just being enveloped in that sort of audio isolation space is really cool too. Although for people like me who have tinnitus, you're never completely silent. You're always getting that hiss or whine or whistle. But it is a relief to take some of the cycles that our brain spends listening to stuff out of the picture and give that part of our brain a rest.
Yeah.
And I really resonate for that. And obviously, I think our brains evolved to be more at home in nature than they are in artificial noise or created noise. So what you're doing with music to sort of reinstate that the buoyancy of nature is really beautiful. I think, I don't know about this, but I think if more of us who consume music, who consume audio content, were to tie in somehow to nature, like maybe we put a babbling brook behind our podcast, something like that. But to be able to tie that in, do you think that would open up in some way the rest of the processor that is us individually to be more open and less guarded, to be more willing to be led by that? I'm not thinking about it as a manipulation tool, so don't get me wrong on this, people, but just to be more comfortable. How you can lower your guard a little bit in nature?
Yeah.
To be that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an invitation at the end of the day to just kind of go back to what we remember, and what we remember is that, nature is our natural state. And we've come out of that a lot. And at the same time, that's also part of our nature as humans, I think, is we are, we're beings that love to create technology and do these amazing things. We're just now at a point where we need to merge and integrate that back into nature in a harmonious way. We don't have to let go of all that tech. We just got to integrate it and make sure that it's harmoniously working with our planet rather than what it is currently, which is the opposite. And, that trying to write music in that way, it's certainly not a novel idea. I know a lot of my favorite composers, you can feel in their music when they are writing in a way representing nature. Garth Stevenson has a great album where he basically wrote it about being on the ocean and in the ocean and mimicking like whale sounds with his cello. He's pretty popular in yoga communities and many other communities and film scores and all that stuff just because it's so evocative and so powerful. And, Olaf Arnolds is another. These are contemporary, amazing composers that definitely are mimicking nature a lot in their music. But then you can go back and, of course, all of the classical composers were mimicking nature, if you really think about that. And Vivaldi's Four Seasons always sticks out to me as like such an amazing way of writing the seasons of the planet, in music. And I found did it brilliantly. So I always love it when composers in music are replicating or giving their own interpretation of nature through the music. It's always, for me, it works real well. It's a great recipe for a beautiful piece of music.
I've always been a fan of authentic or acoustic music. And it doesn't mean I don't love the electronica and everything else, but I've noticed recently that there are like really talented A-list artists. I'm thinking of Jose Gonzalez here, whose entire thing is based upon what we used to call unplugged. But it's the voices, it's the blend of the unaltered voices, it's the blend of the instruments. I mean, I have never heard two guitar players play so seamlessly together and so effortlessly. It sounds like one guitar. There are no, you cannot hear them picking a note that is not completely and precisely together. It's like there's a real commitment here to the authenticity. And you would hear it the same as if you were around a campfire with them or listening to an album.
Well, those are the songs and the recordings I love, right? There's a famous Canadian band called the Tragically Hip, and they have such a hilariously iconic Canadian kind of sounding song too. And it starts off with a loon call, and it sounds like you're on one of the Great Lakes, over a crackling fire. You hear that beautiful loon call. It's kind of dusk, and then the acoustic guitar starts, and you're just like, "Yep,
yep.
Take me home." This is great.
I know exactly where I am, right?
Oh, yeah.
Not that Kiss just played their last concert in Madison Square Garden. It's like nothing, doesn't take anything away from Kiss or any of the incredible bands whose entire sound is based upon the power of electricity, to bring it to us. I mean, I have to play an electric keyboard, people. It's, this is the nature of the beast. But getting it back, I mean, one of the things I love to do, the keyboard does ocean sounds and wind and stuff like that. And I can play the wind, I can play the ocean, right? Which is a blast. And it's all sampled stuff. So, that's how it was heard. And that feels good, to me, to be back in that place. I'm just allowing nature. So you said something a minute ago that made me think of this. Yoga and meditation.
Yeah.
So they're supposed to be done together. It's like what Mozart said about music. Music's preparation for silence, right? So it's a pairing. And there are moments of great silence in music that are so memorable. I think particularly of these moments in classical music, but they happen everywhere. Pick any pop song you like. We were listening to Take It to the Limit the other day. And there's a beautiful place that happens several times in Take It to the Limit where everything just drops out. Take it, it's quiet, to the limit. And other bands use this silence to such an incredible effect to get our attention. They have to play louder by throwing the silence in. It's just so incredible.
It's so brilliant because it is strategic, and it's really powerful when you can nail that. And it is like, music. I find the best or most interesting music has those kind of dynamics and has those silences. Whatever genre, doesn't almost matter. It's just because
it happens in hip hop. It happens everywhere.
EDM definitely.
Definitely.
You build up to that drop, but then have like that silence and that just like, when's it going to happen? Bam!
Yeah. Yeah.
So effective, right? It's so dramatic. It's an amazing tool. I love that Mozart. I didn't actually, it sounds familiar, but I forgot that he said that it's preparation for silence, because that's exactly what they say about yoga. Yoga is preparation for meditation.
Yes.
So
yes,
finding some commonality.
They're meant to happen together, right? I've been more than once in a band where I'll be working with somebody, and usually it's the bass player and I, they're working together, piano, bass, kind of like are holding down the floor. And bass players who are really on it really know this. I've had the really amazing pleasure working with a couple of them. But when I get that look, I know it's time to thin out the texture a little bit, right? The bass player's listening. He's like, give it more room, Bill. Put more space, let more light in between the notes, right? And that's a really important thing for, piano players, particularly keyboardists, working with a group to know. It's like, when is it too much?
Oh, yeah.
It's
a huge skill.
Especially if it's a thick texture. If you've got a rhythm guitar and a lead and some other solo instrument playing over that, drums, bass, keyboard, I mean, you've got to be sensitive to the texture there to make it all work. And you can. But it's a listening act, because you've got to rely on somebody in the band who can hear both sides of it. So it's a two-way street.
I also think of it as it's the same with mixing. I think we've also said this in an episode too, but it's kind of like decorating a room. When you're playing with other musicians, especially in a bigger band, and you got to really see like, okay, where is my space, my place?
Yeah.
And what is going to best serve the overall song and the performance, and finding that place for the keys. Sometimes it's in the lower registers. You want to beef up that bass and some solid, just boom chords or something. And then sometimes it's those flourishes really up high, the twinkly sort of whatever sort of sounds you can get from the higher keys. And it's just all about, how does it mesh with everything else? And it's all about space. It's so true. It's a really good exercise on finding, first of all, feeling and finding the space to begin with. And then how am I going to work with it? How much do I put in, or how little? And if it's how little, what's that one note or those couple of notes, And it's a fun exercise.
We're recording this in December, so it'll drop in January. Season 3, but it's holiday. And so I'm thinking of that amazing song. James Taylor has recorded a version of Jingle Bells.
Oh, okay. I didn't know his version.
And it's kind of like a blues thing. It's a minor blues restructuring of Jingle Bells, but there are probably 7 or 8 instruments in there. And they are so clean. And there's such separation. It's a great exercise if you're out there and want to listen to this. It's a great exercise in listening how to decorate the musical space, right? Like you're talking about. And it's masterful, right? It is so masterful. And you're talking about that. I'm just thinking, wow, this is so cool. There's probably 2 keyboard players. I know there's a piano. There's probably an organ of some kind, the bass, drums, JT's probably playing a guitar. There's a backup singer or 2. So there's a lot of texture to work with. And they pull it off so incredibly well that you still feel like there's enough space in the song for you to be there too.
Yeah.
As a listener. Sometimes it's overwhelming. You're just like blown away, like it's a wall of sound, the Phil Spector thing from back in the day.
Yeah.
Right. But this is so clean and so crisp. And I love that this is like a trend now in recording, is to have everybody sound like you're right next to them, no effects. It's just so clear.
Yeah.
Amazing stuff.
And it's all about the style and genre and everything that, you're going for, right? But even in different genres, like, Daft Punk's, their last big album, the Random Access Memories, very similar in the recording, the very clean, even though it's electronic dance music, they went really back to like that 70s funk.
Yeah.
Sort of sound, and I know that they use that album a lot for examples of like masterful mixing and arrangement, because there's still a lot of stuff going on with all the synthesizers and textures and voice, guitar, bass, drums, etc. And yet, I mean, it's such a clean album in general, every song on that is just so masterfully put together. And it's the same example, right, where they use space so well, and instruments are like put in. It's like a very immaculately put together apartment, or
Right.
space. You're in, you're like, damn, this is beautiful.
That's a great way of describing it. This is sort of along the same lines. Do you know what Lala is? Have you found Lala yet?
No.
Lala.ai is a website that can pull vocals out of a mix.
Wow.
So you feed your mix in there, and you get back a vocal track, totally separated, and the instrumental track. And I've had a project where I needed to bump up the vocals, right? We can't record because the guy's probably dead by now. I mean, seriously, good friend of mine. I don't know if he's dead or alive. He's probably dead. I haven't heard from him in a year. And this Lala was able to pull out the vocals. So now I've got an isolated vocal track that I can play with and make it as clean and crisp as I want it to have it ride over the rest of the instrumental mix. So that's an AI exercise in silence.
Yeah.
How do we silence the band and keep the voice?
That's awesome. I just wrote that down because I'm going to use that for some of my DJ.
Oh yeah, Lala is
remixes here.
It's fantastic.
Yeah,
and the same technology that they use to get the latest John Lennon song out and sounding decent.
Oh, that's really cool.
I don't know if it was Lala itself, but it's the same tech, the same AI.
Same idea. Yeah.
Works in real time. And so thinking about that, I've been wondering, Chris, and this is just a crazy idea, but how you put on the noise canceling headphones and all of a sudden you're in a different space, like the audio space has expanded somehow. And in the VR world, they can move sound around in that space. So you can feel sound behind you, in front of you, above you, below you. It's like a three-dimensional soundscape. So I'm wondering if you could do that live. Let's say you had a room and the right kind of equipment so that when you walked into the sound space, it was as if you had put on noise-canceling headphones. And then the designer of the audio, the concert, whatever, would be playing within that space sounds at different locations around you, as if you were in the middle of the sphere.
Well, you kind of get that in a movie theater a little bit. Obviously, it's not the exact same. Like, we're talking about binaural panning, basically, which is that 360 form of panning. And that really excited me when I first discovered that. And it's so fun to be able to send all your sounds 360 degrees around, and it really is a fun sensation to listen to. But to do that in an environment, that would be a really fun engineering feat, because I've always thought, even with binaural beats as well, like, how do you do that live other than giving everyone a set of headphones?
Right.
How can you replicate that live? And I'm sure you can with maybe a combination of insulation techniques and technology to insulate the sound specifically, but then certain speakers position very strategically. Of course, I imagine it would have to also really depend on where you're standing in the room as well. But the thing is like, I've been to some ancient temples and sites that literally kind of have that sensation.
That's why I was doing this. This is exactly why I'm going to go there. So tell us again, because it's so incredible how this works.
Well, there's a couple of, I don't even know how it works, Bill. I'll be honest. We're talking like I've walked into ruins, so they're not even in their intentional completed state, which is already impressive enough. I mean, if you think about all of our buildings and technology, I mean, just these cell phones alone. Like, there we go. Like when they're dead, they're a brick within hours. And yet we've got some of these temples and structures that still produce energy. All thousands of years later, they've done experiments where they've really literally recorded surges of electrical energy inside these stone circles, as an example, versus outside of them. I mean, they're still functioning devices, machines, buildings, whatever you want to call them. And my experience with some of them, like the Stone Circle ruins in South Africa, specifically this place called Adam's Calendar, which is exactly in alignment with the Great Pyramids of Giza, which is really interesting. And supposedly that's where humanity was created. And I walked into that circle, and it's just a stone circle. It's not, there's no roof to it. It's like a mini Stonehenge, an even more battered up shape than Stonehenge, because it's likely way older. And I felt like I had two hands go over my ears and like muffle everything all of a sudden. It's like walking into an invisible dome sphere, and everyone was just silent immediately. Talk about the power and the interesting silence that came over everyone walking into this circle. And it's a phenomenon that's not just in that space. A lot of these ancient temples, everyone's always so quiet in them. And yeah, of course, that's a respect thing, and that's obviously usually promoted in these more religious sacred places. But I don't feel like people were doing it because they were told to do it. Right. I think people go into these. I remember specifically like the Temple of Hathor in Egypt, very different structure than the stone circle ruin of Adam's calendar in South Africa. But this Temple of Hathor, huge temple, my God, and built over a more ancient one, which no one talks about, which is fascinating. But anyway, which I got to see when I was there. You could see under the floorboards a temple under the floorboards. You're like, oh my God. But anyway, when we walked into this Temple of Hathor, who's the goddess of fertility and love and maternal love, and and it literally felt like walking into this maternal hug, like a grandmother or a mother, and it was so loving and peaceful, and everyone yet again just drops off and stops talking, and we're back into this silence, but it's a beautiful silence, and you can hear the footsteps of everyone echoing off these like 50, 60 foot tall ceilings, just huge pillars. I mean, it's awe-inspiring, and yet everyone was so quiet. It's the same kind of thing. So I do feel that our ancients were building structures sometimes with that intention of perhaps creating room for silence, because with silence comes contemplation, meditation, and ultimately a lot of self-healing can come from that too. So it's interesting. Yeah.
And then they had to go in all the Western cathedrals and put a dang pipe organ in there.
Which are still really cool, though. Pipe organs are like...
Yeah, I know. But I'm thinking of the voices, like the monks chanting.
Yeah, I mean, it's the human voice, right? I mean, and that's again, like the further back you go, I feel like we really had it. Something, we figured out something then, and we're literally just remembering and rediscovering that now. And I was at a workshop earlier this last week, and we're toning and humming and chanting, and I'm like, look at us coming back into our ancient monk practices, where we're like, hey, maybe it is a good idea to do this chanting thing, and oh wow, look, science is actually proving that it is helpful. It's like
exactly.
We only did this like thousands of years ago.
All those incredible echoes that happen when you introduce sound into either a natural or constructed space. We call it reverb now, but I love the natural echoes that happen inside of a meditation dome, or the natural ones that you were able to go into.
Yeah, and that's a part of the experience too.
True. To introduce sound purposefully.
Yeah, and once again, there's a place, the Hypergeum in Malta, which I got to go to, and there's literally the way they design some of these chambers. Oh, and as well in Turkey, there's an underground city in I forget the name of it in Turkey, and anyway, they built these chambers where there's a certain spot you stand and speak, and then it carries your voice perfectly throughout the entire complex, perfectly. All through acoustics, all through reverb. You're like, how in the hell did they know to do that through their and doing it through stone? It's not the easiest stuff to be cutting through, and yet you're building perfect acoustics. You don't even need a microphone and amplification. And it's the same with the the more, I guess, more recent in history, the stadiums, not the stadiums, the not cathedrals, when they're it's the outdoor auditorium. What are they called?
Like amphitheaters?
Amphitheaters, exactly. Yeah. Same kind of idea.
The dome shell is supposed to amplify the sound.
Yeah, and it does. I've seen demonstrations, or I've tried it myself. You stand at that very center of the stage, and then the people in the audience, it perfectly works. It projects your voice beautifully. Yeah.
I want to talk about ambient music for a second.
Yeah.
And this has just occurred to me as we're talking, but there's very little silence in ambient music. And I'm wondering how that works. Do we need to hold on that long, or can we drop back a bit every so often and let the silence be in the room? And I say this as someone who plays it, and you do as well.
Yeah, that's a good question. Some of the healing music I have just locked and loaded in my playlist on Spotify that I'll play for a whole variety of things. Some of the pieces, when they're using the crystal healing bowls, they really dip in loudness a lot because the bowls are actually kind of like that.
Yeah.
So that I find when it's the singing bowls, whether they're crystal or the Tibetan ones, those I find naturally can create these pockets of silence because they'll dip down pretty almost inaudible and then back up again as they start up. Yeah. So that kind of ambience, I think can create that space. But you're totally right. When I'm writing an ambient piece, there's no silence at all. And I think, though, it's like anything. It's never black or white. I'm sure there's definitely purposes for pieces of music with no silence. Ambient music, it might be serving a purpose where it needs to be constantly creating some form of sound or music to serve its purpose, whether it's underscoring a meditation, maybe.
Yeah.
And you want that sound to support the meditation. And then the silence they can do after they listen to it, perhaps, or something like that. So I feel like there's definitely a purpose to having music with no breaks. And it is really nice to have. I like the bowls when they dip in and out, in and out, in and out with the volume. It is really nice. I think it's like an and or kind of thing,
Yeah, I like that too. I'm wondering if we need to approach it as a paradox.
Yeah, I guess it is.
Like that sonic paradox, or where's the balance between silence and sound, and then depending upon which kind of music you're writing, you can adjust around it. What best supports the purpose.
How do you find with writing ambient music? Like, it's a different process, isn't it, than something very melodic, right?
I've never written any of it down, but most of the time I'm just playing it straight through. Like there's no silence. I've played around with. So that the kind of music that I consider that I would compose as ambient music is more active. There's a drum beat, that kind of stuff is happening in at the same time, and a whole variety of beats. So some of the beats lend themselves to moments of silence, where you can just let the reverb die out and then start up again. And I don't know how that will work. I've never had anybody come back to me and say, "Oh, that piece really sucked," or "That was so great for X." Whatever, nobody's really provided that feedback, but I'm curious about it,
Yeah.
I'm curious. I think we've talked about this before, how there's room for ambient music that moves, that actually has some activity in it, right? As well as the ambient music that just lets you be in place.
Yeah.
The difference between Shavasana, which is the more relaxed form of ambient music, like the 40 hertz music that I love that you wrote, right? That's all about the quiet and the sustaining that over time. But there might be a place, for who am I thinking of? Who's the Kundalini yoga guru? What is her name? Can't think of it right now. Anyway, she's an active Kundalini yoga teacher, and Kundalini yoga is moving around. It's jumping around, whatever. And her videos have music behind them that's more active and more up. So there's more of a steady beat to it, that kind of thing. But it's continuous. There are no moments where it stops entirely. So I think there's enough play around it that it might be worth investigating a little bit further.
Well, I really like with yoga, I've done this before with live yoga and music, and even more so with live breath work and music. The spaces are so important, for those moments, especially in breath work when you're holding the retention. Sometimes I'm still playing, but it goes full ambient when they're holding the retention. And then if they're in that, again, in between the breath work modules, or in between like the heavy breathing in and out sections, there'll be like this ambient, more silence based music, or again, just straight up silence for that. Or if there is ambience, it's very like minimal, and it's really designed to be that like let your mind go wherever it needs to go. And then when the breath work starts up again, it's like beat comes in, melody comes in, structure comes back in.
Right.
And then that helps people, I feel like, get back into the rhythm kind of thing.
Yep.
So it's a fun juxtaposition of yeah, definitely. I find actually it's a great example with breath work is the music really is like that one extreme to another, back, boom, boom. And it really helps. It's like a guiding track in a way too.
Yes. That makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
So I see how that can work so well, especially like leading the sing-along, right? It's really nice to be able to sort of stop singing for a while in the middle while there's an instrumental break, right? It's the same kind of practice, different appearance of it because we're singing actual songs with notes and stuff. But that moment where we can just relax and be with the music is such a welcome moment.
Yeah.
You know? To listen to the sax solo, after having sung 2 verses is a real treat.
Oh yeah, I mean that's going back again to a really good arrangement and placement. You do something for a while and then throw in another different instrument to really change things up. And you're like, whoa, what's going on here? I remember you said saxophone, I think, right? That just reminded me of a concert moment back in Toronto when I watched a great band from California called Poolside. And they have a great genre, their own little genre of music called daytime disco, and just such a fun band. They do a great cover of Neil Young's Harvest Moon, and like such a funky, cool, such a great rendition of that song. And I was already blown away. I didn't know this band, so they were the opening act for another band I was seeing, and they blew me away with that, their whole set. But their cover of Harvest Moon was so awesome, and then it was already groovy, it was already fun, and then this bridge section comes in and this guy comes out and rips a saxophone solo, and it just took it to this beautiful new level. We're like, all right, I was already in love with this, but now you just took me to this amazing, unexpected place, musically speaking. Like, thank you. Just that new instrument switch, just like take off. Goodbye.
Yeah, I'm going to go listen to this. It's ironic, but just 2 days ago, I was doing the music class thing that I do at the Golden Door, and Harvest Moon came up. Well, guess who's not on Spotify?
I know.
Neil Young.
Yeah.
But there is an entire playlist on Spotify that is long of Harvest Moon covers.
Yeah, I've seen that too because I've been looking.
What? So I'm going to go find Poolside because, first of all, I love that genre.
Yeah.
And secondly, I want to find out how they do it and what it sounds like, right?
Yeah, and he's more local to you too. They're like just awesome. I'm pretty sure they're kind of close to where you are, and they're great live if you're going to catch them.
You're in Vancouver. I'm in San Diego, so odds are they're probably closer to me.
Yeah,
if they're from California.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, check them out. Poolside, really, really, really fun music, and a great example too of really good arrangement, really, really smart arrangements.
Yeah, the Poolside stuff, that genre.
Daytime disco.
Yeah. So,
that's what they call it. I'm not making that up.
It's true.
Yeah,
it's a great kind of cool ride. Club de Belugas does tons of that stuff. Rotating band, they go anywhere, do it. But what a great genre! I mean, it's really cool.
Yeah, there's certain genres, especially where I'm like, there's certain artists and bands that have just honed in on such an awesome sound. It's very much its own thing, and if you're not in that mood, then you won't like that. But when you are in that mood, it's like, boom, it's perfect.
It's the best.
Yeah, because there's other artists too. It's funny because there's many artists that are also very cross-gender. They can, I don't know, like appeal to so many different people in so many different moods. And then there's certain artists that are so specific into a niche and a sound. And I always love those differences.
I know we're talking about silence here, but I'm thinking right now of when Eric Clapton did Unplugged, and when Dylan went on stage Unplugged. I think it was way before Eric Clapton did it. But the difference there is that in the electronic mix, there's hardly any space, but in the Unplugged mix, there's room. There's natural space in there, and that's that introduction of more silence or more space, more musical space, changes everything. Changes the whole nature of the song, and it's not like it's better or worse. It's just different. And being able to introduce that difference is so powerful.
I mean, one of the bands I feel like for me has done that in an unexpected way that they do it so well is Sigur Rós. Like they play with dynamics so well, especially live. Even though it's technically electronic music, it's also very acoustic. I mean, they play with orchestras all the time, and it's so dynamic when they go so quiet sometimes, and then bam, like just so loud and powerful. And sometimes they'll build their dynamic and the loudness over many minutes, and it's like it's a slow build, but it's just incremental and mesmerizing, and they do that very well. And then everything will cut out, and it might just be the lead singer's voice cutting through or something. Like they play with silence very well as well. It's such really, a tool, right? It's like an instrument, silence, in a way.
Yeah, it is. It's like the other instrument in the room.
Yeah.
And being able to manipulate that so well, that's really incredible. I love to have some dynamic variation in what I'm listening to. And I know there's normalization, all of that. There's even settings in Spotify or in the car where you can, make everything the same volume.
Yeah.
No, I want to hear the dynamics. I want to work to hear the soft stuff, and I want to be blown away by the loud stuff.
I mean, film scores do that a lot.
Totally.
They're just like they're like classical music in that way. Very like quiet, bam, loud.
Oh yeah,
very dynamic in that. I was just listening to the Lord of the Rings soundtrack recently.
I have my disagreements though with the Dolby sound systems in theaters, which they often turn up so loud.
Oh, I know
that the separation goes away.
It's like ear bleeding loud. You're like, come on, man.
Ear bleeding, yeah. Exactly.
Like,
I gotta wear ear protection in there.
That's not. No, you shouldn't.
But I'll say something else. So, I've gotten involved with these silent disco infrared.
Hey, those are fun.
It's a blast. So I've got the rig, right? It's a little transmitter, and I've been listening to stuff on TV through these because I want to hear the sound. That you hear about Oscars for sound design and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, they're working it. So we've been watching Servant on Apple TV, and it's a M. Night Shyamalan thing. Yeah. Really creepy. But the sound design in there, you wouldn't hear it unless you were wearing these.
Right.
Because not only is it very low, not below the level of hearing, but you hear stuff in the headphones that you couldn't hear, even with a great, sound bar or whatever on your TV. You get it in that way. And it's tied in so well with the action. So I know this works in theaters too, but putting it intimately into your ears with a headset. Oh, wow. Chris, there's nothing like it.
Oh, yeah. Watch like your favorite movies or TV shows with those headphones, and it's going to be a whole other experience. I've had the same thing where I'm like, where was that sound?
Lord of the Rings, Hobbit, I've been watching.
You'll hear a line of dialogue that I never heard because it's so like under the mix because it's like a little nugget that they wanted to kind of sneak in there or something. Yep. It's just, you get these really, it's like watching it for the first time almost.
It changes everything. Because most of the time, even with regular, it happens all the time too with music, where you'll be listening in the headphones. You go, I never knew those lyrics. Is that what he was singing?
Yeah, I know. Right? I know. And that's why mixing music and film and TV and everything is such a, I have so much respect for that skill because making it sound good on all devices.
Yes.
Woo.
That's crazy.
Kudos. Incredible. I have a huge respect for that. Yeah, it's it's impressive because when it can sound good coming off the phone and through headphones because they're completely different. Your phone's getting 30% of that full mix probably, and then the headphones is getting 100%. So and then they still both sound good and the main things still come through. And that's a gift. It's a really amazing skill.
Yeah, we've talked about this before, right? Where somebody that we both know, I can't think of who it is right now, who's like a mastering engineer, will listen to the mix in his car, will listen to the mix in his car driving in traffic, will listen to the mix in the car with the top down, will listen to the mix under headphones, listen to the mix with the monitors, and just like to listen to how it all is working and to hit that sweet spot. And there's so many ways we listen to music anymore.
I know.
That's incredible.
That's
a complete art.
Oh, it is. It really is. I'm hunting for a kind of an engineer I can start collaborating with. So anyone listening, watching, let me know. Shoot me a message.
Right. And if you're interested in playing with the crazy, live controlled sound thing, like being the other member of the band who controls how the audience hears the sounds in space, hit us up too, because I'm really curious about that, whether anybody's doing it.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, and especially for any musician performing live, your engineer, who's ever working the board, the mixing board, that person basically may as well be a part of your band, and that's why you always gotta be nice to your sound people.
Yep. And if the first person you hire for your road gig, it better be the sound engineer.
Yeah, it really is though. And if you can get that person to also be your manager, that's like the best.
Oh, that's the best.
That's the best. I met a couple bands where they had that. I was like, oh, that's so good.
Yeah.
I will manifest that. It is very handy to have, and it is so invaluable. I mean, that's a whole other conversation, but it's amazing. The support, all artists need that support, and it's hard for a lot of artists to get that, obviously, because just the nature of our current way that the arts work with budgets and all that fun stuff. But when you can get that, it's huge. So important to have that support, and then it allows you to really fall into your performance, create that space, do whatever you need to do. It's very freeing.
The manager of the silence.
Yeah, the manager of the silence. But it's so true, and when you're doing sound check, you make your sounds, and then you listen after the sounds, like is there weird reflections, weird reverbs, things like that. You're still listening to the silence, of the venue, for that matter, just to get a sense of the space that you're in. What's that going to sound like for people?
The sound engineers that get to work in the same venue all the time, like who's it? Bob Boylan, who does sound for NPR's Tiny Desk. He's got that room dialed in, and it's an office. But he can make that room sound like anything.
Yeah.
And anybody that comes into it sound however they want to. It's like, what a luxury to be able to be that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty fun.
You're not just running the board. You actually have an acoustic relationship with the space, in which
that's like
presented. Yeah,
pretty well every theater space usually hires on, full-time sound people, or at least one or two.
They better.
Well, of course, right? And then they get to know the space, and they get to understand the acoustics, and any show or performance that comes through there, right? They work that, maybe in collaboration with the engineer of that production.
Yeah. The stage sound engineer who's on stage with the band listening.
Yeah.
Sending the house feed.
Yeah, exactly. And that's fun to be around too, and just seeing how well they know that space. And you're like, well, will this feedback here? Oh, no, you're good, and like, okay, cool, I trust you. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And I realize very important part of all of this is that I can no longer do it alone, Chris,
Mm-hmm.
It used to be me and a grand piano, but that's not the way anymore. There's other parts of it that need to be part of it. Might still be me and a grand piano. But between the sound that leaves the string, and the people who are going to hear it, there's a whole opportunity there for creative space, right? To be able to manage that. And I'm very happy to have help in that space, because it's its own art.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, and this is nice. This podcast is it's literally giving me time to reflect on silence. And, I think we can always deepen our connection to the silence. And I would assume that almost all of us don't have enough silence in our day-to-day life. I can certainly say that for myself. I know I don't include enough silence that, just talking about all this right now is making me think, I might make some more time for silence in my day-to-day life, and just kind of make more of a habit of whenever there's that moment, like, okay, let's just maybe even just 30 seconds right now. It's just my episode of whatever I was watching ended, and I'm about to do something else. Let's take a moment in between things for a bit of silence
and just contemplation.
Yeah, or not.
Some people call it prayer, but not silence that's accompanied by music. I want to go there, because I think it's so important that we remove as much of the stimulation as we can, and just allow us to be internal without any guidance, without any thought.
Yeah, no audio playing, no music, no podcasts, even ours. No podcasts, no TV shows. Just if there is any sounds, it's all the sounds that are naturally created by your environment around you.
Yeah, your own breath. I mean, listening to your own breath is
Your heartbeat.
What's that? There's somebody that's described. So you grabbing the back of your wrist, and then holding that whole thing over your third eye. You can feel your pulse as you're allowing energy into third eye. So if you put your, it's going to be hard to show this, but I'll turn my finger. So there's the grip.
Yeah.
And then over the third eye, I'll often do this like lying on my back. And it's a great way to come into presence.
Whoa. I like that.
You feel the whole thing happening. And the third eye point is really powerful if you do Reiki, you can use Reiki there.
That's so when you're just sorry, that was really cool, Bill. Thank you for sharing that, because I'm like, I can feel the pulse on my hand, but then I put it on my third eye. It's like I can feel the pulse of energy going into my head.
Yes.
That's really cool.
And it's you can do it without thought. Anything you can do without thought welcomes silence.
Yeah.
I think.
I know. I think I don't know.
I think, therefore I am.
Exactly. Well,
actually, I don't think, therefore I am.
Yeah. I'm working more on that. Less thinking, please. And
Less thinking, please. Less thinking, more silence.
Well, I appreciate this, Bill. Thanks for having another great episode today. This has been a nice reminder, really nice reminder for me.
Shall we close with a moment of silence?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, here we go.
But let's invite everyone to let's just take this moment of silence, but like to meditate as well. Obviously, if you're driving, don't do that. But let's take this moment to just have a silent meditation. Okay.
Works for me.
All right, a couple, maybe minute or two. We'll see how it goes.
Ready, go. I kind of don't want to come back.
Yeah, that was really nice. This is what I mean. I feel like it can become kind of addictive in the best way. We don't get it enough, and it's like a little treat. It's like a little mini vacation. So thank you for that.
Oh, thank you, man. And hey, if you're listening and you've been practicing meditation, you don't need a big lead in and a big rollout. You can just turn it on, right? Even if it's for a few seconds.
That was like 45 seconds. I don't think that was not even a minute, and that felt great.
Yeah. It's enough. What do they say? What's that? I can't think of the old parable now. There's a longer story that I won't tell. But the idea is, it's enough.
Yeah.
It's enough.
Absolutely.
Well, hey, welcome to season 3, everybody.
Welcome to season 3. Catch us on our next episode. Who knows where we'll go and what we'll talk about, but yeah, thank you.
Shofar got me thinking we should be doing these naked.
That's the next season.
The next season, season 4.
Oh man, that would be that's where our views start to go through the roof at that point.
Oh, absolutely, man. Of course, it'll only be like from the neck up, so people.
Yeah, exactly. Then we can't stay on YouTube. Oh, love it. Well, if you, beautiful audience watching and listening, if you have any suggestions, if you want to hear us talk about something on an episode, let us know. Of course, drop us a little message, a little bit of love in the comments, a little like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Wherever you're listening or watching, we appreciate it. We appreciate you. Thank you for tuning in. Yeah, it's season 3 now. I've just loved these conversations, Bill. It's all we've been doing since day one, and not getting old for me.
Not getting old for me, man. Thank you, brother.
Thank you too. It's so good to see you.
Likewise. Aho.
Aho.